Howdy, folks, and welcome to another great adventure. And tonight we're going to have an adventure to the other side of the world, through the land, across Antarctica, across the ice, the world beyond the ice. We're going to continue on with this book here. It is the woman who was born on the lands behind the ice walls. So stick with me, and if you haven't caught it, we're on part 2, and this lady is telling her story of what's going on. Now, may or may not be true, but it can only lead to your imagination to make it what it is. Now, we're on chapter 4, and I thank you all for coming here and being with me and joining me tonight as we continue on with this. And of course, I am going to share a picture versus my ugly mug. And there we go. And are you ready to take this adventure? So, how about that? Anyway, chapter 4, the Anunnaki's lands. The famous Anunnaki, another of the colonizing and parasitic races that is sickening the other worlds, manipulating and controlling the children of children for years and years. Another of our enemies, a hostile and power-hungry race. They are the creators of the pyramids and built these structures in all the worlds they visit. They are, in our opinion, the strongest race within the Great Dome, even above the custodians. The technology they use to attack other worlds is incredibly advanced. The weapons of destruction and the facility they have to enter through the domes is also something notorious, and that characterizes them and frightens any race. The utilization of portholes for transportation led this race to be one step ahead of the other. In fact, it is known the story they have left defeated the custodians when between them there was a great conflict during the opportunity that we had in the known lands to be able to free ourselves. And they were also the ones who caused us to be defeated in the known pact between the custodians and the Anunnaki. This race is confused in several of the stories that are told in the known lands in a casual and often deliberate way, but we find in several stories and books of the known lands the Anunnaki as reptoid or reptilian beings. But the reality is that they are beings of a very tall stature. They can reach 5 meters. They live in an arid zone with little vegetation. And although the waters of Orus seem to be paradisical beaches from far away, the reality is that they are deep waters, and in them live snake-like animals that can measure up to 55 meters long. And they do not like the visit of other beings from outside. Their skin color is yellowish green, although their leaders can have totally different tonality. But all of them have very dry, scaly skin, and their eyes are distinguished by yellow, red, or black. And they have a particular iris that other beings also share that is characterized by a cleft, depression, or gap that can be both uni and bilateral, generally dark in color. During the many civilizations in the known lands, both the Anunnaki and the custodians, usually the former, have been depicted in many forms with humanoid bodies and with different heads of animal types, reptiles, birds, and a myriad of them, thus confusing the true history of the human beings and conditioning the human mind throughout his life by these parasitic beings. They are beings that lack all empathy and are based solely on the oppression of other beings and the conquest and the thirst for power and control. In this, they are very similar to the custodians, and that is why they have preferred to share that position than to kill each other, although tension is always expected between these two races, which could be convenient for all other worlds that are under their power. Chapter 5. Okay, Chapter 5, Lands of Vesuvius. The original beings of these lands, also called Vesuvians, and unlike those of Mars, they all survived all colonization. But how? It is still not known for sure how these beings were able to make fun of the brutal colonization they suffered long before the custodians took the known lands. According to some legends, within the giant race, the first humans, though, thought to make contact with the original Vesuvians in order to form a block against the colonizers and thus learn from each other. This happened in the beginning, just before the custodians took the first humans by surprise, and they ended up being colonized in the walled lands. There are theories that some of the early humans who started in the lands of Asgard, Lemuria, and Atlantis, in conjunction with portal connections into Hyboria, may have escaped before the first custodial attack and possibly settled in these lands of Vesuvius. The Vesuvians are beings who base their technology purely and exclusively for spiritual development and benefit their path of ascending or transcending internally. They did not possess weapons of destruction for attack and defense. This the custodians saw as easily accessible. Once they penetrated their world environment, they thought that everything would be simple in those lands. The surprise came when the custodians set foot on the lands of Vesuvius and Vesuvius? The Vesuvians, the new fit, yeah, whatever. And the great storm hit the circle environment very suddenly, and they did not take note of it at the time, as they thought it was the weather there. But as the days passed, they saw that the storm never reached, and they could not find a single Vesuvian on the surface. The storms never ceased until the last custodian did not cross the dome to the outside. With the custodial technology, they began to notice that the Vesuvians were underground in bunkers of a technology hereto unknown to them, and the storm raging up there on the surface was truly devastating. The trustees gathered to come to a decision soon. They were not going to stay there much longer. In fact, many trustees started revolts and didn't see the point in dying up there. Things got pretty complicated for the leaders. Many saw it as a failure, and others thought of returning at another time. But true to their history, they did not give in, and many custodians died on Venus. Even a very important leader is said to have fallen in those distant lands. The conquest of Venus for the custodians was a failure, in fact. They did not fight against the Vesuvians, who did not possess weapons. If they had them, I think it would have been a crushing defeat for them. When the story was known in other circle environment, they tried to intimidate it. But the disastrous results later we will comment on at this point. The technology of the Vesuvians has been deployed or been developing was not overnight. It was years and years of progress. And those bunkers had everything. High level of subway connections. The custodians tried to block and even destroy the area with explosives and missiles. For each attempt, many custodians died because the areas near the bunkers were also full of explosives and other technology that hindered even the approach. A custodial leader, already at the end of his failed invasion, met with the Vesuvian leader, as it was feared that the custodians might try to blow up the entire surrounding circle in retaliation. No one really knows what was discussed or what happened that day, but the custodians left the lands of Venus in the worst way, with heavy casualties and a defeat to their credit. We know because the Vesuvians themselves told us that in this meeting, besides pleading for peace in their lands, they would have asked for the liberation of the humans, which was totally rejected. And that was chapter 5. Moving on to chapter 6, Lands of Draco. Lands of a Draco. The Draco are also known as the Eminites, Etamites. Sounds like termites. Etamites. And the inhabitants of the Draco lands, northwest of the known lands, crossing the lands of Venus. These beings that once visited our lands are known for their great technology advance in weapons for attack and defense, as well as great psychic development. Some of their beings can communicate telepathically, using this technique to subdue any colonizing enemy or even to colonize other lands. The Ethamites, by means of a treaty, achieved a union with the custodians. But at the beginning, this was not so. But the custodians attacked their lands when they were not in their most advanced stage. But on the contrary, the Draco lands lack islands. But 2 large continents are found with great vegetation. In fact, the most exotic plants of any other circle environment within the Great Dome exists there. Its great wall of ice was never an impediment to be able to cross other domes and conquer other lands. These walls were left by the custodians when they decided to put an end to the total manipulation of their environment. Did they stop manipulating them? We really wonder. We think not. They started by lands outside the domes, like their nearby land, Osiris, but they moved their technology to the nearer lands. Many of these beings stayed in their paradise islands, but they used many of their military bases for weapons development. What happened to the ancient battle between the Enemites and the custodians? Well, the custodians finally won at the beginning, since the Enemites, as we mentioned, had not achieved the progress they have today. But it was not easy, nor did they surrender, since they knew their lands well and were experts in making large tunnels. The custodians had to use advanced technology to finally achieve victory in those lands and leave their mark on the walls of ice surrounding the dome in the circle environment. The Draco lands were also visited by other races, such as the Anunnaki, and inhabitants of other nearby lands, such as the famous Grey, and that inhabit the Orion lands. The links with these beings led to the fact that both races lived together in a truly fraternity. Both the Draco and the Orion, the Enemites and the Greys, can be found together. The age at which these beings can reach is approximately 192 years compared to the years of the known Earth. While the custodians infected their atmosphere and their air they breathe at the time of their attack, as of today, they have no disease nor any great war being waged, although they are spiteful beings, and it would not be strange if they were planning to colonize other lands, or perhaps a revenge towards the custodians. But this is all mere speculation. A great flood that still disconcerts its inhabitants was generated at the beginning. A strange wall surrounds its coast. It is technology that they are carrying out. It is said that it is used as radar and that it could attack any enemy that wanted to cross them. A surveillance system of their lands increased in the last time, product of the fear that the great colonizers still have for what could be outside this great dome. It is possible that the custodians and the Anunnaki are very interested in this type of wall to replace the ice walls they create. Chapter 7. Oh, yeah. Chapter 7. Lands of Mars. Chapter 7. Lands of Mars. Lands of Mars, who inhabits or inhabited these lands that lie between the ice walls. There lies this great world crossing the second dome and traversing lands that few humans have ever seen. Mars has great incidents in the known lands, since in those lands several events related to humanity happen and still happen today. The immense circle environment and misnamed red planet harbored a great and diverse life within its dome. This native Martian civilization was reportedly totally annihilated by the colonizers. So why wasn't part of it left for possible future development, or even for some kind of manipulation by their colonizers themselves? Apparently, this race was firm in their convictions, based on their morals and ethics, preferring to die and extinguish their race in battle rather than beg for freedoms in quotas under conditions and colonization would impose. The Anunnaki, at the end of their mission, realized that not a single Martian was left standing. Since the last ones even committed suicide, they were surprised, since they did not expect this to happen. In fact, it was their first colonization, and after this, they took precautions. The original Martian race was known in later studies was an advanced race in its technology that prioritized spiritual growth and welfare of their community. They had little military training and technology, so their defense was almost nil. The custodians soon took great lands and grouped in great centers, taking advantage of all the knowledge and progress that was left there. Nowadays, the lands of Mars are simply experimental lands where several races coexist and generate wars between them and different reasons for almost eternal conflicts. The leaders of these lands are both Anunnaki and custodians. There is a community of humans, mostly made up of people who belong to small groups and earn their passage only by their hard work in betraying their own race in their homelands. The best known member, who might even be living in the human colony of the last humans, I'm referring to the last reset, would be the well-known explorer, Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, who knew how to be on the other side for a long time and to confess some truths before giving himself up completely. Some of the many stories that we have out there and that are written today to keep the truth away from the Terra-Infinita and the civilizations that live behind the ice barriers and the domes that separate them. In the lands of Mars also coexist with the famous Greys and some minor draconian colony, or also known as Enemites. Between the Greys, the human colony, there is a rivalry that existing since both the beginning of the transportation of the custodians and the humans there. The custodians and the Anunnaki monitor everything very well and do not miss any detail of them. What had begun in the clone lands today takes place in these lands Possibly this transfer is due to the time difference that exists in that environment. Their time, as in many other circle environments or lands within the different time or different domes, is different from the lands of Mars. For this reason, the passage to Mars of humans is always welcome, despite the dangers involved, since it is a one-way ticket to a long life of almost 500 years in comparison. There are also other races, almost all moved by the custodians in their frantic conquest of their 178 circles or worlds. And many of these races originating from different sectors were also moved there. The lands of Mars are considered as in a large zoo where different behaviors, confrontations, and conflict resolutions are studied, a huge farm of exhaustive monitoring and analytics of races. Well, we still got some time. Let's cruise on to chapter 8. Hope you're enjoying all of this. Chapter 8. Picture of the ice. Anyway, chapter 8, the lands of Neptune. Nerita, Triton, and Poseidon, the names of their lands that shine in the dark atmosphere that surrounds their circle environment. The Neptunians have had a hard time since their birth, not because they have not been able to adapt to their environment and survive in a climate where vegetation is non-abundant, but because the sandstorms and the aridness that encloses this world can be really devastating for that reason. Most of the big cities were created on the shores of their most fertile lands, leaving a large portion uninhabited. Anyway, the Neptunians managed quite well to carry out colossal creations there, buildings so tall that exceed twice the size of the known lands, since it is the faithful companion that will go with you wherever you go in the dark world, as its sun is also very different from those of the vast majority and the total opaque. Throughout the time and with a great technology development that they knew how to carry out. Nothing of the climate nor of the darkness was a great obstacle for them. There are also large cities with very high constructions, many pyramids, since the Anunnaki were the ones who entered this world and overtook their environment after a long time. Recall the pyramids are the key to the Anunnaki's colonization. The first starts with friendly and supposed technology exchanges between beings. The Anunnaki can be really great swindlers and lie to their leaders to generate a close bond, and then stick the cold dagger in the back. Overnight, the Neptunians were left with nothing, as the Anunnaki had planned everything from the beginning, and everything went as expected. It is said that this is one of the first lands that were penetrated and ended up colonizing. The natives of these lands could not cope with any technology like that, although we can assure that it was still in full development. But by the time that the Neptunians had opened a long spiritual and development path focused on real personal and spiritual improvement across the Great Dome, after transcending matter, but it is not that they left the defense to chance, but they had developed a great military power and did not end up serving against the colonizers, although they did get a big scare when they rebelled. In the beginning, the Neptunians accepted defeat, but as these beings were used for certain tasks within their own lands that obviously ended up directly benefiting the Anunnaki bosses, they rebelled against against them, generating several pockets of fierce fighting. Then the casualties on both sides began, and everything got out of control. In the center of these lands, Triton became the epicenter of the absolute chaos. The blue blood of the natives was spilled in great quantities. The Anunnaki are still today their great enemies, and after years they've reached an agreement to withdraw from their lands. Today, the Neptunians live in peace with a high development and technology that benefits their environment, their spiritual growth, and they are in peace with the neighboring lands and races. But according to the story, they prepare in silence for any new attack that could come from the nearby Anunnaki lands or other lands that could generate some danger for them. Do Neptunians travel to other lands? It is said that they have traveled to other lands to investigate how other races live, to generate certain links, and to be able to explore their environment. But it is said that they have not visited the known lands or spoken to any leader at any time. Although they do know the lands of Mars and have been able to make contact with the human custodial colony located there. As I commented in previous paragraphs, the Neptunians are a race of dark blue color. They feed on local fruit, since based on their system, they cannot ingest a great variety of foods. They do not eat meat, and they have a certain friendly relationship with the custodians, although it is not well known why, since they are generally beings that always sought their freedom and independence. Chapter 9, the lands of Uranus. And we're going to end right there because that's the end of the show. Oh, well, anyway, thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. We're probably going to have a few more parts. We're already on chapter 9. Can you believe that? 2 episodes, 2 parts in, and we're already on chapter 9. We're going to finish this book in no time. So with that, thank you for being here tonight and catching me, and give me a thumbs up, a like, check me out on some of my other channels. Don't forget to go to Milky Way Soul Tribe where you get the best in spiritual reckoning and all kinds of good stuff. Stupid Talk and Stupid Talk Daily on my other channel, and check them all out. Descriptions in the link below this show. Check them out there. Okay, thanks everyone for being here tonight. There we go. I look a little. Bye, everybody.